Hey, good morning and welcome. Today we have a little bit of a transition. So we are going from having an interview person today. So we're going to have interviews in the future, but for today, we are not going to have an interview person. We're going to have me. And it's going to be me talking about all the things that I've been through, some of the stories that I have from working at the Ohio School for the Blind. So stick with us, and we'll get to tell you more in the future. But I want to make sure that you know that there's going to be a lot that you can learn from this discussion, because I have learned a lot as well. Stay there. Bye. Welcome. And before we get started, I want to make sure that you share this video out with as many people as you can think of on your timeline. And then put a picture of you winking in your timeline. That's important to do, because then you begin to think about, I want you to think about, oh man, if this guy next to me, meaning me, knows what makes him unique and it's not his eye, I wonder what makes me unique. That's where learning begins, because if you can learn, if you can know what makes you unique, then you can figure out how to serve someone else with that, with all of that. Understanding what makes you unique is really important. So let's continue to work on that today. So in terms of what makes us unique and what makes me unique is part of my personality, my positive personality, and how I'm able to share my story with others in order to have lasting impact on their lives. That's what makes me unique. But also, working at the School for the Blind makes me unique. I never thought, I never wanted to go there. I didn't want to work at the School for the Blind, because, I mean, what do I have in common with them? I wasn't very smart. I do have a lot in common with them from a visual impairment perspective. But there are so many things that I've learned from them that I just never would have imagined. So I'm going to take you through a few stories. I have a full page of different stories that I've run across, but we're gonna talk about each one of them, and we're gonna think about what we learned, what I learned from it, and what you can learn from it. Because really, this is all about you. I want to make sure that these videos that we're doing, you learn from them. So the first thing that I did, or one of the first stories that I have written down here, is how blind people pay with cash. How do they do that? It really doesn't make any sense. No pun intended. But they pay with cash, and they do it. Well, one is they'll have different bills aligned in their wallet in a different fashion. That's one way. But there's also some technology that has helped them quite a lot. And there are technology readers, or there are readers for the dollar bills or the $5 bills or whatever they are. So they'll put the corner of the bill in that reader, and it'll tell them what they're handing the cashier or whoever they're paying. So that is partly how they pay with cash. And I never knew that. I was really lost and confused when I first went to the School for the Blind, and I saw, in the concession stand, there would be people paying. Like, how do they do that? So that's why I asked. I said, how do you do that? And that's what came out. So there's good things that come from all this. And the more we know, the less we have in terms of blockages and maybe not blockages, but maybe barriers between us. So the more we know about how they operate and how they function in a day, the easier it's going to be to be around them. Because I'll tell you, one of the first times that I was there, I was sitting in the conference room. So they didn't really give me an office for the first year or so. And as I sat there in the conference room, somebody walked by, and it was the principal. And the principal has no sight at all. So she walked by and she started to come in the room, in the conference room where just I was sitting by myself. And I got scared. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid that she thought that nobody else was in the room, so she was going to sit in the room. I didn't know what to do. But once I got comfortable with her and got comfortable with the blindness, then it was okay. So I said, I spoke up, to try to make sure that she knew I was there. But once she knew I was there, she said, "Oh, who's in here?" And I said, "It's Brian Wagner," and it was the after-school program coordinator. And then we talked about, just whatever was on her mind. I didn't at that point. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell her that I was scared to say anything because I felt stupid. But if we can not feel stupid, if we can have those barriers taken down that prevent us from seeing other people the way that they should be seen, and not worry about what it is that they're being able to see, or not worry about how different things affect them. We have so many things that we say day in and day out to different people, and things like "see you later," or whatever. So things like that, where a blind person, they're not going to see you later, but they are. They just won't see you like you see you. And that, to me, has been it's been one of the most interesting, and that was early on in my days there at the School for the Blind, where I started to understand, those words are okay to say. You just you don't always recognize that as an issue, but giving yourself grace and forgiveness for those things, it's really probably the most important thing that you can do when you encounter someone that has visual impairments, or maybe you encounter someone that's deaf. Being able to give yourself grace is a really important aspect of living in the world. I mean, that goes for anybody, really. To understand, sometimes you step in it. Sometimes you say the wrong thing. I do that all the time. We all do. But you got to give yourself grace to be okay with it. And, maybe you need to apologize for whatever it is you said, or maybe you just need to own up to it. But at the same time, maybe the other person didn't feel like it was a big deal. So you don't need to really make a big deal out of it. Making a big deal out of it makes it worse in some instances. Let's see what else here. So with dealing with blind people, over the last few years, I have got to a point where there are things you say. So, for example, what I just said, blind people, that is not correct. What is correct is for me to say people that are blind, because they are people first, and then they are blind. Much like people that are on the autism spectrum. There are people that are on the autism spectrum. They're not autistic people. So the autism part doesn't come first. However, I learned this yesterday, that when you're working with someone that has deafness, you say this deaf person, or a deaf person. You don't say the person that's deaf or the person that's hard of hearing. You say deaf person, and there are certainly rules that go along with how deaf you need to be, how how much of your hearing is impacted in order for you to be able to be considered a deaf person. The deaf community is very very close knit, and I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but I would say that it's more of a community than it is and a culture, because that deaf community is very very it's just very different, and the blind community, the visually impaired community, is more of an impairment. It's more of a handicap than anything. So those are two distinct groups that we need to make sure that we understand. So what else? Text. Oh my gosh, my first encounter with the School for the Blind, it was amazing. I wasn't even working there yet. I wasn't getting paid, and I just went to a field trip with them. Actually, it was downtown Columbus. So I drove to the school, and then I got on the school bus with some other kids, and we sat there and we went downtown and got to see some stuff at the convention center. But working with or sitting with this one kid that I sat in, his name was Dane. And Dane showed me how he could do so many things on his phone that I never imagined. So Dane was totally blind. He has zero, maybe he has some little bit of light perception, but very little. So he holds his phone up and he taps on it on a phone. Look at your phone. With a phone like this, how do you tap on it? How do you know where you're tapping? Well, I don't know how he did it, but he did, and he tapped on different things, and it could have been Braille notes, or it could have been different what do they call it, icons, but he knew where they were when he put his fingers in a certain position on his phone. So I said to him, he was telling me about this, and he showed me how he gets on his phone and he has conversations with people. He will text with people, or he'll, and sometimes he does voice to text as well. But he does things on Facebook. He has a profile, if you will, on Facebook, an account. There you go. And anyway, so he does things on Facebook like a normal person, like anyone else would. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say normal. I know I caught myself, but anyone else would. So they are all normal people. That's my point. And technology has only made it easier for them to be able to do so. What a great experience with Dane and having the ability to learn how they can do things on their phone, which I never would have imagined, especially now with the iPhone and what the technology advances have been made. I still didn't think that it would be accessible for someone that's blind, but everyone has a phone, and it's very important for them to have their phones, because their phones are probably more important than ours, because they use them so much to navigate the world. What else here? So, well, we haven't gone through very much, and there's just been so much has been learned. So with the people that with what I learned, with Dane, is that everything is possible if you just let it be possible. If you don't put up a barrier in front of yourself. For me, for example, I'm working on expanding my speaking career, and I want to make sure, yes, this COVID's a problem, but outside of COVID, I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to different communities, different speaking events, and having the opportunity to make my voice heard and to tell my story and all that. Well, what's standing in front of me is the fact that I need to understand the different communities better. I need to know more about what it is that they have as successes. What do they have as the goals? What do they view as as positive? What do they view as negative? But what is standing in between them and success? Much like for me. So how do I do that? Well, I do that by, I'm working on it right now. So I do that by research. And I research and I research and I research. So that's been important to go through. And someone is here on with us this morning. My friend Rhonda. Good morning, Rhonda. It's good to see you this morning. Yes, it's always good to have you on and other people as well. So I'm talking about the School for the Blind and all that I have learned from there. So I've gone through 2 or 3 different sections or different questions, not questions, 2 or 3 different topics, if you will. So that's text and texting. So and when you hear them, when you hear someone that's blind and they're texting, they'll hold their phone up and you'll hear the voice of the phone. It's Siri or whomever, and it just goes really, really fast. And a person like me can't understand it. So I can't, unless I listen really close, I wouldn't be able to hear it because it would go really, really fast. That's probably a bad impersonation. But the person that's blind listening to it, that's what they hear, and they hear it very well. They know exactly what is being said. So that, to me, is another thing that I've been able to learn from the School for the Blind. What's next here? So, and that goes the same thing for a computer. So how does a blind person work on a computer? To me, that made no sense at all. I didn't think it was possible, but it is. It is possible. Once they get sat down at the computer and they get in front of the screen, yes, and they navigate the mouse, they turn it on, they do all that. They can do all that. And once they do, and they pull up the different programs, their main program is JAWS. And JAWS allows them to be able to see things, hear things that are on the screen. And that, again, that's where the different texting or different Siri or whoever the narrator is for the device comes on, and it talks very, very fast, but it's all in a pattern that this person that's blind can see. So when they hear those words, they hear that noise, they know exactly what's going on the screen. I wish I could explain it better. One of these days I'm gonna be with a person that's blind, and we're gonna maybe even go through that on this show. So tell me in the comments if something like that would be of interest to you, to have the ability to see what they see in a show like that. So I'm trying to think who I would have on. So because I can't have the kids come on because I don't want to upset any parents or anything like that. So, and that's why I've not posted any pictures of kids, from the School for the Blind, because there's definitely rules that go along with any of that. So, that's one of those things where you just need to be safe about that. But there are other people that I could go to that are blind that might help me. So tell me what to think about that. If there's something of interest to you, where you think, well, how do blind people, navigate the world? How do they, walk down the street? How do they walk down the sidewalk? Maybe some of them have canes. Maybe some of them don't. If they don't, how do they do that? Now, Connie and I, we watched a show, a movie the other day. It was called something about rain. And I can't remember the name of the show, but it was with Eric Weinheimer. And Eric Weinheimer is blind. And he went down the Colorado River, which is the Colorado River goes through the Grand Canyon. And in the Grand Canyon, he had multiple times where he rolled over and was able to, he went down the Grand Canyon in a kayak. And there were multiple times when he rolled over, he was able to flip himself back up and still be able to continue to navigate through the river. So and the rapids. It was a great documentary. So if you ever run into that with Eric Weinheimer, please watch it. It's good. Um, so yeah, so that's one of the things that I would say from an overall perspective, in order to be able to understand better the groups that have blindness, and even groups with that are deaf. There's just so much to learn from them, and so much to learn about them. The more and more we know about them, we're going to find common ground. Like Dave Caperton talked about yesterday, finding common ground. Once you find common ground, then you can have a conversation with somebody. And once you have a conversation with someone, then you can learn more about them. And as you learn more about them, you'll have light shined, shown. You'll have a light shined on the topic or on that person, and you'll be better able to understand what they're going through. So that is one of the things where I would say we all have a lot to learn. And if I'm thinking to myself, what else can I do for you? That's where my head takes me. We've only gone through half the page, and I think that's probably good for now. I want to make sure that I'm doing my best to serve you and to be a good person for you. And if there's ever anything that I can do for you, please, by all means, let me know, because we all have blindness in our lives. If we can understand our blindness, if we can take those blinders off at times and put them back on at times, when we put them back on, we focus on our vision. And when we focus on our vision, we can see things that sometimes we're not able to see without those blinders on. So there's so much to learn and so much to know about all this. And the more we know about people, the better we are going to be able to serve them. And that's one of the things that I would say it's crucial in order to be able to do, because we have so much to serve our community, and there's so much to give, and there's so much love out there. Let's continue to spread it. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and as always, keep one eye on the road.